Welcome to Midnight Murmurs. Are you ready for a spine-tingling tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat? Our latest sleep story, The Curse of the Silent Town, will take you on a journey to a small, isolated town where strange things are happening. Follow our protagonist, a curious journalist, as they uncover the dark secrets of the town and race against time to break the curse. So, sit back, relax, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more sleep stories like this one. The Lost Town. Chapter 1: The Arrival. The journalist's car glided along the dirt road, kicking up dust in its wake. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the surrounding forest. The trees loomed over the road, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. As the car approached the town, the journalist couldn't help but feel a sense of calm wash over them. The town was small and quaint, with neat little houses and manicured lawns. The streets were empty, but the journalist didn't feel alone. It was as if the town was welcoming them with open arms. The journalists parked the car outside the town hall and got out, stretching their legs after the long drive. They took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp, clean air. The silence was broken only by the sound of a distant bird call. As the journalist walked towards the town hall, they noticed a few people peering out from behind their curtains, watching them with curiosity. The journalist smiled at them, hoping to put them at ease. Inside the town hall, the journalist introduced themselves to the mayor and explained the purpose of their visit. The mayor was a friendly man, with a warm smile and twinkling eyes. He welcomed the journalists to the town and promised to help them in any way he could. The journalists spent the rest of the evening settling into their accommodation, a small cabin on the outskirts of town. They cooked a simple meal on the stove, enjoying the solitude of the woods. As they drifted off to sleep that night, the journalist couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The town was quiet, serene even. But they knew that something sinister was lurking beneath the surface. And they were determined to uncover the truth. Chapter 2: The Town's Secrets. As the journalist begins to investigate the disappearances in the small town, they quickly realize that something sinister is lurking beneath the surface. The townspeople seem to be hiding something, and the journalist is determined to uncover the truth. In this chapter, we delve deeper into the town's secrets. The journalist starts by talking to the locals and asking questions about the missing people. At first, the townspeople are hesitant to speak, but as the journalist persists, they begin to open up. The journalist learns that the town has a dark past. Years ago, the townspeople made a pact with an ancient evil that promised them prosperity and protection in exchange for a sacrifice. The townspeople agreed, and for generations, they have been sacrificing their own to keep the evil at bay. But now, the evil is demanding more sacrifices, and the town is running out of people to offer. The journalist realizes that the disappearances are not random, but rather, they are sacrifices to the ancient evil that the townspeople have been trying to appease for generations. As the journalist uncovers the truth, they become increasingly afraid for their own safety. They know that the townspeople will do anything to protect their secret, and the journalist may be the next sacrifice if they're not careful. But the journalist is determined to break the curse and save the remaining townspeople before it's too late. In the next chapter, they will delve deeper into the history of the town and the ancient evil that has been haunting it for centuries. Chapter 3: A History of Evil. The journalist was determined to uncover the history behind the curse that had befallen the town. They delved deep into the town's past, speaking to the older members of the community and poring over dusty tomes in the local library. As they read through the yellowed pages, the journalist began to piece together a dark and sinister history. The town had once been a peaceful place, but centuries ago, a great evil had taken root. It was an entity of immense power, a malevolent force that demanded worship and tribute from the townspeople. In exchange for their obedience, the entity had promised them prosperity and protection. The townspeople had readily agreed, desperate for the security that the entity offered. But as the years went by, they began to realize the true nature of the entity they had bargained with. It was not a benevolent force, but a wicked and cruel one, delighting in the suffering of mortals. The townspeople had tried to break the pact, but it was too late. The entity had grown too powerful, and the curse it had placed upon the town was unbreakable. It demanded sacrifices, human offerings, to sate its twisted hunger. And so, generation after generation, the townspeople had given up their own, hoping to keep the rest safe. The journalist shuddered as they read the accounts of the sacrifices, the fear and desperation of the townspeople etched into every word. They wondered how long the curse had been in place, and how many lives had been lost to the entity's hunger. As they closed the tome, the journalist knew that they had to find a way to break the curse. The entity had held sway over the town for too long, and it was time for it to be vanquished once and for all. Chapter 4: The Sacrifice. The journalist's heart was heavy with dread as they heard the news of yet another missing person. They knew that this was no ordinary disappearance. The evil force that had been haunting the town was demanding a sacrifice. The journalist was determined to find a way to break the curse and save the remaining townspeople. They started by looking into the town's history, trying to find any clues or hints that could help them understand the curse. They pored over old documents, spoke to the oldest residents, and visited the town's only library. The journalist discovered that the town had been founded by a group of settlers who made a pact with an ancient evil entity that lived in the surrounding woods. In exchange for prosperity and protection, the entity demanded a yearly sacrifice. The settlers had agreed, and the tradition had continued for generations, with each family taking turns to provide the sacrifice. The journalist was horrified by what they had learned. They knew they had to act quickly to save the remaining townspeople. They decided to confront the townspeople and convince them to break the curse. They went door to door, speaking to each resident, trying to make them see reason. But the townspeople were deeply rooted in their traditions, and many of them refused to listen. As the journalists continued their search, they stumbled upon an old diary written by one of the settlers who had made the pact with the entity. In it, they found a clue that gave them hope. The diary hinted that the curse could be broken if the entity was given a sacrifice willingly rather than forcefully. The journalists knew what they had to do. They gathered the townspeople together and explained their plan. They convinced the townspeople to give the entity a sacrifice willingly in exchange for breaking the curse. The townspeople were hesitant at first, but the journalist's passion and conviction eventually won them over. As night fell, the townspeople gathered in the town square, and the journalist led them into the woods. They came to a clearing where the entity waited. The townspeople offered up a sacrifice willingly, and the entity was appeased. As it disappeared into the woods, the curse was lifted, and the town was bathed in a golden light. The journalist breathed a sigh of relief. The town was safe once again. But as they turned to leave, the journalist felt a cold hand grip their shoulder. They turned to face the entity, which had returned. It spoke to them in a deep, ominous voice. "You may have broken the curse, but you have not seen the last of me. I will be watching you, journalist. I will be waiting." And with that, it disappeared once again into the woods, leaving the journalist with a sense of unease that would stay with them for a long time. Chapter 5: The Ritual. The ritual had been whispered about for centuries, passed down from generation to generation in hushed tones. It was the only way to break the curse, but it came at a great cost. The journalist had discovered the details of the ritual through their research, and now, with trembling hands, they began to gather the necessary items. The first item was a feather from a raven's wing, the symbol of death and rebirth. The journalist had to venture deep into the forest to find the raven, and when they finally spotted it, they felt a chill run down their spine. The raven was perched on a tree branch, watching them with an intelligence that was almost unsettling. But the journalists knew they had no choice but to proceed. The second item was a sprig of mistletoe, which was believed to have healing properties. The journalist found it growing in a small clearing, and as they plucked it from the ground, they felt a sense of calm wash over them. The third item was a lock of hair from the person performing the ritual. The journalists knew this would be the most difficult to obtain, but they also knew it was crucial for the ritual's success. With a deep breath, they took a pair of scissors and cut a lock of their hair, feeling a sense of vulnerability wash over them. Finally, the journalist found a clearing in the forest where the ritual was to be performed. They laid out the items they had gathered and began to recite the incantation they had memorized. As they spoke the words, they felt a sense of power building within them, and they knew that the ritual was working. When the incantation was finished, the journalist felt a wave of exhaustion wash over them. They collapsed to the ground, but as they lay there, they knew that they had succeeded. The curse had been broken, and the town would be saved. Chapter 6: The Confrontation. The journalist took a deep breath as they entered the heart of the forest, where the ancient evil awaited. The air was thick with a foreboding tension, and the rustling of leaves sounded like the whispers of the cursed town's restless spirits. The journalist knew that this would be the final showdown between good and evil, and the fate of the town rested on their shoulders. The entity was unlike anything the journalist had ever seen before. It was a grotesque abomination of tentacles and eyes, pulsating with an otherworldly energy. The journalists drew their weapon, a simple but sturdy axe, and charged towards the creature, their heart pounding in their chest. The battle was fierce and brutal, but the journalists did not falter. They swung their axe with all their might, hacking away at the monster's tentacles as it lashed out with its many eyes. But the evil was relentless, and the journalists soon found themselves backed into a corner. Just when it seemed like all was lost, the journalists saw an opening. They launched themselves at the creature's core, plunging their axe into its writhing mass. The entity let out a deafening roar and exploded in a shower of sparks and black smoke. The journalist emerged from the clearing victorious, but at a great cost. They had been mortally wounded in the battle, but they knew that they had done what they had come to do. They had broken the curse and saved the town from the grip of the ancient evil. The journalist stood alone, facing the ancient evil that had plagued the town for centuries. The air was thick with tension and the silence was deafening. The evil entity towered over the journalist, casting a menacing shadow that stretched across the clearing. But the journalist did not flinch. They knew that this was the moment they had been preparing for. The evil spoke first, its voice a deep, guttural growl that sent shivers down the journalist's spine. It taunted the journalist, promising them power and wealth beyond their wildest dreams if they would only bow down and worship it. But the journalist was not swayed. They stood firm, their resolve unshakable. The battle began. The evil entity attacked with a ferocity that was almost too much to bear. It hurled bolts of dark energy at the journalist, who dodged and weaved with a grace that surprised even themselves. The journalist fought back with a fierce determination, their own energy crackling with an otherworldly power. The battle raged on for what felt like hours. The journalist and the evil entity were evenly matched, neither able to gain the upper hand. The journalists knew that they needed to end the battle soon, before the evil entity could regroup and launch another attack. And then, in a moment of clarity, the journalists realized what they had to do. They had to make the ultimate sacrifice in order to break the curse and save the town. Without hesitation, the journalists summoned all of their strength and launched themselves at the evil entity. The explosion that followed was deafening. A blinding light filled the clearing, and then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the battle was over. The evil entity was gone, vanquished by the journalist's sacrifice. The journalists stood alone in the clearing, their body battered and broken, but their spirit unbroken. They had done what needed to be done, even if it had cost them everything. The curse was broken, and the town was saved. As the sun rose over the forest, the journalist collapsed to the ground, exhausted but at peace. They knew that they had made a difference, and that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Chapter 7: The Aftermath. The sun was setting as the last of the townspeople emerged from their hiding places. They had been locked in their homes, waiting for the journalist to save them from the curse that had befallen their town. Now that the evil had been defeated, the journalist sat on a bench, watching the townspeople shuffle past them. It was a bittersweet victory. The town was saved, but at a great cost. The journalist's mind was still reeling from the events of the past few days. They had seen things that no one should ever have to see. They had made choices that would haunt them for the rest of their life. The journalist couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. They had promised to save the town, but they hadn't been able to save everyone. Some had been lost to the curse forever. Others had paid the ultimate price to break the curse. The journalist had made the difficult decision to sacrifice a few to save the many. As the townspeople gathered around the journalist, offering their thanks and praise, the journalist felt hollow inside. They had done what needed to be done, but at what cost? The journalist knew that they would never be able to forget what they had seen and done in this cursed town. The night sky was clear, and the stars were shining brightly. The journalists took a deep breath and closed their eyes, feeling the cool breeze on their face. They knew that they needed to come to terms with the choices they had made and the consequences of their actions. The journalists opened their eyes and looked up at the sky. They knew that it was time to move on, to leave this cursed town behind and start anew. They would carry the memories of this town with them, but they would not let those memories define them. As the townspeople dispersed, the journalists stood up and walked away from the town. They knew that they had done what they had to do, but they also knew that it was time to start a new chapter in their life. The journalist walked into the darkness, not knowing where the road would lead them, but confident that they could face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 8, Epilogue. As the journalist drives away from the cursed town, they feel a weight lifted off their shoulders. It's over now, but they can't shake off the feeling of unease. They've seen the darkness that can reside in even the most seemingly idyllic places, and it's left a lasting impression on them. The drive is long and quiet, and the journalist finds themselves lost in thought. They replay the events that led up to the final showdown with the ancient evil over and over in their mind, trying to make sense of it all. It's hard to believe that it's over, and that they managed to break the curse that had held the town in its grip for so long. But as they think back on the people they met in the town, the ones who had vanished and the ones who had stayed behind, the journalist realizes that there's more to the story than just a simple curse. They had uncovered a web of secrets and lies, of betrayals and regrets, and it all came crashing down in the end. As the journalist pulls up to their apartment building, they take a deep breath and step out of the car. The city is noisy and chaotic, but it's a welcome change from the eerie silence of the cursed town. They climb the stairs to their apartment, feeling grateful for the familiar surroundings. Sitting at their desk, the journalist begins to write their article about the cursed town. They know it won't be easy to capture the complexity of what they've experienced in a few thousand words, but they're determined to try. They want the world to know what happened in that isolated town in the middle of nowhere. But as they write, the journalist realizes that they've also learned something about themselves. They've always been drawn to stories of the macabre and the supernatural, but this experience has shown them the true darkness that can exist in the world. They'll never forget what they've seen, but they also know that they can't let it consume them. And so, as the journalist finishes their article and sends it off to their editor, they take a deep breath and let the weight of the cursed town slip away. It's time to move on, to explore new stories and new places, but they'll always carry the lessons they've learned with them. Thank you for joining me for this sleep story on Midnight Murmurs. I hope you enjoyed the mysterious journey through the cursed town and found it relaxing and soothing. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more bedtime stories to help you drift off to sleep peacefully. Until next time, sweet dreams.